Aloha and good morning, and mahalo for joining us today. In a moment, we will hear from Maui County Mayor Richard Bisson, followed by Maui County Fire Chief Ventura, MEMA Administrator Lono Kailua Hewitt, and Acting Governor Sylvia Luke. They will be providing the most recent update on the Haleakala Crater Road fire. Facilitated questions and answers will follow promptly after remarks conclude. Without further ado, it is my privilege to introduce the Honorable Mayor Richard Bisson.
Aloha kakahiaka, thank you for all coming in this morning. I first wanted to thank Governor Sylvia Luke for being with us today and taking the time as she was a few days ago. I just want to acknowledge the concern that our community is having right now, the anxiety, the stress, the reminders that trigger people's memories. And we want to make sure that our community is aware of the help that's available. And again, especially our kula ohana that have had to experience this, again, so close to their homes. The mental health support is available with the county at www.mauirecovers.org. Again, www.mauirecovers.org is available for our citizens, as well as the Department of Health, the Hawaii Crisis Line, the Hawaii Cares Crisis Line 988. Again, we want to encourage our citizens that are experiencing sadness and anxiety to call those numbers and reach out. As you all know, this fire started back Wednesday, July 10th. It feels longer than that as it's been such a 24/7 operation. We all know that by now that about 200 cars were safely led out of the area above the fire that started, and we now know has consumed about 574 acres. I shouldn't say about, I think it's exactly that number according to the drone, but I'll let the chief speak to that. Today there's 80% containment that we're happy to report that, again, we want the community to be aware that our first responders have been diligently working on that. And I'm also here to say a very big mahalo to all of our partners, those that are here in the room and those that are not. Of course, the fire department, the police department, the MEMA, HIEMA folks, the county Department of Public Works, the state Department of Forestry and Wildlife. They've all been up there in the mountain helping the National Park Service, the Haleakala Ranch folks. Most of this, if not all of it, occurred on Haleakala Ranch land. And then, of course, our private folks who helped us, Alpha and Goodfellows, and some of the other folks that came. So I'm very grateful to all of those folks for helping us, as they have done in past emergencies. I also want to make a very big note that there have been no injuries and no structures that were damaged. And I'm also, in addition, grateful to Acting Governor Luke for signing her emergency proclamation early that morning, as did the county, so that we could access the necessary emergency funds that can become available, and of course the assets that are available as well. So I'll ask everybody to continue to stay alert, stay connected. I should say stay connected through the MEMA alerts, as well as MauiCounty.gov/MEMA, MauiCounty.gov/MEMA. Our County of Maui Facebook, our Instagram, the fire department also has an excellent Instagram page as well. And again, I will encourage all of our citizens and our residents and our visitors to stay connected through all of that. And finally, just a big mahalo once again to our first responders, who really are our heroes because they help to keep our community not just connected, but they show that deep care for our community. So again, a special mahalo to Chief Ventura, Administrator Lono Kailua Hewitt, and of course, Acting Governor Luke. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Mayor Bisson. Up next, Fire Chief Ventura.
Aloha kaiaka. As Mayor mentioned, the acreage since Friday remains the same. The deviation in acreage is basically due to our drone flights. We're trying to get just a more accurate perimeter and flying over the fire slower to get a more better description of the exact fire perimeter. We really want to thank all of our partners for helping us this, and that's the reason why this fire has maintained the size it has since Friday. The Department of Forestry and Wildlife and the National Park Service. DOFA's been working with us for the last 4 days. They're still with us today. And the National Park Service, not only from Haleakala, but also from volcanoes in the Big Island, have been with us for the last 3 days and are with us this morning as well. We've established bulldozer lines about 70% of the way around the fire. And in addition to the main dozer lines, we've put contingency dozer lines around the southwest corner, about a quarter mile outside of those dozer lines. And this would not have been possible without the help of our dozer operators from Alpha, Goodfellow, and Haleakala Ranch. Even just the dozer lines has been quite a challenge because of the terrain, the gulches, and the gullies that they have to cross. In addition to that, the soil up there where there is very, very soft. So the dozers had challenges just cutting fire lines. And the lines are so soft that we're unable to drive on them. So everybody's hiking on foot to get around this perimeter. And then at the top of the fire is where the lava fields are. The dozers aren't able to operate in that area. So at the top of the fire, above the eucalyptus area, is where the dozer lines have not closed off the fire. Our drone team was assigned with a few different tasks. We've had a drone team for a little over a year now, and as they improve their skills and ability, they've been able to fly night flights for us. They do forward-looking infrared in the evening, which gives us an idea where the hot spots are, and then that is communicated with our ops the next morning. Additionally, this fire is not visible from the road or from one particular point. You can't see the whole fire. So at night, when our resources were lower and they were on foot, we would use the drone to fly around to provide situational awareness, because if there was a flare-up, that might have triggered some action on our part or notifications to the community. So the drones were there all night to fly and keep an eye on the fire as the evening progressed. We mentioned the lack of water up there. That was another huge partnership that we needed to build and call to all of our partners in this. Public Works, State DOT, Goodfellows, Alpha, Vars Construction, Mahipono, Sea Haze, all provided us tankers since Wednesday evening and through today. Overall, since the fire started, we've shuttled over 500,000 gallons of water up the hill to fight this fire. At the peak of our efforts, we had 7 helicopters engaged in the fire. That number ebbs and flows depending on the fire activity up there. As I mentioned, the perimeter of this fire is 4 miles long, only a quarter mile of it having a road along the perimeter. So the helicopters have multiple tasks, not only fighting the fire, but also shuttling firefighters. So we're moving firefighters from the landing zone up to different spots along the fire. And what they also do is they're moving portable water tanks, little totes, along the fire line as well. And then as we get them in place with the crews, the helicopters will fill them with water, and then our firefighters will work off of those totes for a few hours, and then they'll move the tote, and then they'll redo, and they'll just keep working their way down the fire line. So that's some of the tasks that the helicopters have been involved with. The National Guard aircraft have been here and been working with us for several days, still here right now. And I have some numbers to share with what they did just Friday and Saturday alone. They dropped over 63,000 gallons of water on the fire. Their focus was mostly up in the eucalyptus forest area where there was heavy timbers and where we couldn't put people into the fire because of hazards. And then where the firefighters are working and they're on foot, that's where that really tough work is being done. That's where they're on foot all day, they're hiking in, they're walking, they have hand tools, they have very limited water, they're working with the helicopters to call them in to do drops, and then they're working off of those totes when they have water available near them. But that is taking a very long time. It's very tedious work and extremely physically demanding. As you guys might have seen in the last few days, the kind of ebb and flow of the clouds, we've had various challenges on this fire. The elevation up there creates its own challenges. We additionally have the relative humidity up there is very low, so that increases our fire behavior. And then the afternoon clouds come in, so that grounds our aircraft. So if the days are clear and longer, we're able to fight the fire longer. When the clouds move in and we have to ground aircraft, then we have to be more mobilized on our feet and do the work without the aircraft. And then the high winds have come and gone throughout the week. Obviously, when there's higher winds, we have a lot more flare-ups. But when it's calmer, then we're able to get progress on the fire. Just a reminder to the community to remain vigilant. This fire is not out. We are not done with it. And we will be up there continuing to work on hotspots. There are some sections of the fire that are dangerous that we're unable to work in. For example, the eucalyptus trees that have burnt through are falling down kind of on their own. And so we're not going to put people in there to mop up in around those trees. So this means we'll see hotspots inside the perimeter for probably quite a while. And we'll continue to be up there and monitor and work with our partners moving forward. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Fire Chief Ventura. Up next, Administrator Kailua Lona Hewitt.
Aloha mai kākou. So I want to go over the EOC objectives that were established and used throughout the operation. That kind of gives the public an understanding of the purpose and function of MEMA and the EOC. The first would be to ensure public safety, beginning with the concern of the 200 vehicles cut off, as well as the potential of the fire to switch and kind of trigger an evacuation. All of the operations within the EOC was related to ensuring that public safety. The second objective was to coordinate the resources and response efforts. And so we were committed to identifying the resources that were necessary to respond and make sure that they were on scene, understood their capabilities, and make sure that they were integrated within the incident command system to effectively coordinate with us. The third would be to gather and disseminate information and give that information to the public in a timely way, as well as that information sharing with our partners to streamline the coordination and the effort. The last being the support of recovery and restoration. So partners were brought in that regard, that if there was an expected recovery that would need to be taking place or any kind of restoration of critical infrastructure, those partners were brought in or communicated with. So regarding the overall operation for the past few days, it was connected and related to those four objectives that drove the EOC operations. What I'd like to say is that the success of this operation is related to the incident command element that was on the ground. So I first would like to thank the Chief Ventura, as well as Chief Pelletier, as well as National Parks and DOFA, who fulfilled that unified command effort up on the ground. The pathway to a successful emergency incident response is related to the command element on the ground, because they drive the incident objectives, which drive the EOC objectives. So I'd like to just speak to the success of and the competency of that group that helped to facilitate the coordination of response behind them. I think the second thing is the coordinated effort from all partners. There were multi-jurisdictional lines crossed, both public and private, both local, county, and state. And the partners were coordinated well. I believe I was very pleased with how that went. And we did everything in our power to make sure that that coordination happened well. I believe the alerts, warnings, and public information that was sent out, that was coordinated with our county comm. So I'd like to give our shout out to Loxney Abraham and her team, because their presence in the EOC in support of that messaging is why the public got those updates in a timely manner. So I appreciate that. I'd like to give a shout out, thank you to General Hara and coordination with him and providing us the resources on the ground as well as those aircraft, and that coordination with them, the support was really awesome and was integral to us overcoming this to this point. And to all the partners that Chief Brad Ventura had mentioned, the private partners that showed up, came up and integrated with the dozers and tankers, those things were instrumental to us to coming to this point. Thank you.
Mahalo, Administrator Lono Kailua Hewitt. Up next, Acting Governor Sylvia Luke.
Good morning and aloha. First of all, let me just say, since the fire started, we have seen such coordinated efforts. Even before first action was taken, the fire chief was already in contact with the state forestry agency, and they have already charted out a pathway on how to contain and control the fire. In this situation, for the state of Hawaii, red flag warnings has become a new normal. Red flag warning has become a new normal in that, in addition to hurricane, during this time, we all have to be vigilant about not just hurricane readiness, but wildfire readiness. For individuals who, especially in the Kula area, our sympathies and empathies goes out to these individuals because they've already experienced tremendous amount of trauma, and for them to relive some of those prior experiences have been really difficult. So we just wanted to mahalo the mayor, Mayor Bisson and his team, the fire chief, the police chief, and especially the MEMA administrator. What the MEMA administrator has done in this situation has cleared a real clear path on how to be proactive. One of the things I wanted to highlight was that while they were getting ready for potential evacuation, the MEMA administrator was in constant communication with the police department, and they were already charting out a course of evacuation, working with National Guard. So they were situating individuals around the neighborhood just in case evacuation was to be done. And if you had seen some of the things, the work that was being done for the last several days, they had zones plotted so they knew exactly which neighborhoods had to be evacuated first. You can never overplan for a disaster. And in this situation, nothing beats real life and real time experience to refine and get better sense of how we can do it better next time. And in this situation, we are just so thankful for the leadership that has been shown by Mayor Bisson, by the MEMA director, by fire department chief, the police department chief, and big mahalo goes out to Yukile. A lot of folks in the Kula upcountry area feel a lot of anxiety, and it's because of community leaders like Yuki, who has been the conduit to calm some of those individuals, to encourage individuals to sign up for MEMA announcements. And for all the residents out there, for you to sign up for MEMA updates and to be aware and be proactive, we just can't thank you enough, because it's our individual efforts to get ready that makes a lot of our jobs easier. So mahalo for continuing to be vigilant. As we go into August is deemed the red flag month. And that's scary for many of us, but we need to make sure that in addition to be hurricane prepared, we have to be wildfire prepared. If you have pet foods, stock up on pet foods, pet medication for your kupuna, especially for our keiki, diapers, and formulas, just make sure that you have a 2-week supply. And again, thank you to the team, thank you to the Maui County. This was a really successful exercise because there was so much coordination. And again, thank you to General Hara and Administrator Barrows of Haima. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Acting Governor Luke. At this time, we'll welcome questions from the media. We'll be taking 1 to 2 questions from each media partner. I'll start with Chelsea.
This question is for anyone. What lessons learned last year are we now implementing today in this fire?
The question is, what lessons have we learned over the last year in addressing the needs of this fire? Chief?
I'll just say I think we all understand that each fire is very different, and this fire is different from the multiple fires that occurred last year. So this times 5 was what it was like last year. So, but of course, I think the most obvious difference is we have a different team who have a different set of skills running our EOC and directing that, and that's probably the most obvious difference. As far as lessons learned, I think we're still trying to improve through each event, and the specifics of that, the details of that, I'll leave to the experts. But as in the position that I hold, seeing the way the EOC is run is probably one of the big differences for me.
And I could just add to that, as Mayor mentioned, we're always trying to get better. It doesn't matter how simple the task is or how complex the incident is. There's always room for improvement in every organization. And if you're not trying to improve, then you're stagnant, then things are going to not progress. So for us, we're just trying to push out more information and make sure that the community has the information that they need. Keep in mind, remember, we go to 250 to 300 of these brush fire wildfires a year, and we don't have to do evacuations and notifications for all of them. But we want the community to be aware of what's happening around them. And then if we do push out information that is going to request action on their part, that they just be prepared for that. So thank you to all of the community members.
Mahalo. Ali'i?
Do you know how many more people signed up for MEMA notifications?
The question is, do we know how many more people have signed up for MEMA alerts?
Thank you for the question. I am not sure. I can find out with my the person that's in charge of those notifications and tracking that. Hopefully, it increased a lot after the expo this Saturday, I believe. Yeah, we're making a big push to get more people signed up on MEMA alerts, as well as improving the way, making that more easier for our public to sign up. But I can get that number to you later.
Wendy?
Can you speak to the improvements in situational awareness and the incident command structure? Has anything changed since the August wildfire in that respect?
Can you speak to the improvements in incident command and situational awareness? What has improved since last year?
So as Director Lona Kailuahio was saying, the more of our organizations we can put together on scene to create a unified command, the easier it is to communicate amongst agencies. And so we've been working on that for over a year to kind of continue to polish it up and make it more routine. That is going to help. And then as far as technologies, we've introduced things like our drone program, and that allows us to have more situational awareness, not only during the day, but also at night. And at night is when the fire seems to be calmer. However, we don't have all the aircraft on scene to give us that continual situational awareness. So we're working through that, and even that program in itself has room for improvement, because as right now, we fly either aircraft or drones, but not at the same time. But we have to get to a point eventually where we can fly both of them together, because they provide different information for command. So like I said, constantly looking for ways to improve, whether it's technology or whatnot. But firefighting has been very there's very, very traditional ways to fight fire, and with the weather that we're facing now, we have to sometimes think outside the box, how it's going to impact communities faster. But it all goes back to community preparedness, everything that we kind of set up in our Ready, Set, Go guide, and having the community ready and hardened for wildfires. So it's all of us working together. Thanks.
Mahalo. Chivo.
I've gotten NEMA alerts for quite some time, and it seems that the NEMA alerts lately, particularly this wildfire, were not only very frequent, but they were informative. They really let you know what was going on. How do you plan to send out the NEMA alerts, or is it on a set schedule, or how does that work? And if the need for evacuation order does come, can you explain how that would come together?
Great. In recapping the question, regarding NEMA alerts, we noticed that the alerts were more frequent with this fire and more informative. Can you explain the cadence of the schedule of pushing out NEMA alerts and how that helps support the fire during these difficult times?
Thank you for the question. Well, I think to begin this response, what is priority for our agency is to be able to communicate with the public in a timely manner and provide that accurate information. I cannot compare it to how it was done before. I can just say that it's a priority for me to provide information to the public as quickly as we can. When we provide information early to the community and we quell the angst, that helps the overall incident management piece, right? So nobody is in panic, there isn't a chaos, because everybody understands what to do, where to go, and where our situation is. So in incident management or incident response, the notifications help us to manage it collectively. NEMA alerts is currently our way from NEMA to provide this public information that we want to be able to provide early. Like I said, I think a critical piece that happened on this time was our integration or coordination with our county comms team. Our county comms team, with our alerts perspective, were coordinated, and those messages we set the schedule that way. In regards to the evacuation piece was going to be triggered by the command on the ground. We were trying to coordinate with the time it would take for police to evacuate certain zones and how that related to the fire spread. And so the coordination of the information from the command would have helped us to make that trigger or establish that trigger, and then use emergency notifications or alerts to inform the public. We would have used WIA, which is your wireless emergency alerts over your phone, and we would have used like I said, we would have used all the tools in our arsenal that were available to us to alert the public if the evacuation was necessary. Thank you. Yeah, so the police, let me say a shout out to the police department. When we were coordinating the evacuation, because the winds were swirling up there and they were uncertain, there was a time below mile marker 6.5 where the winds were at 0 to 5. Right above mile marker 6.5, the winds were 40 plus. And so what we asked as we were trying to coordinate, we asked the police department to we zoned out the subdivision to support an effective and efficient evacuation. The police went door to door, kind of preparing, giving information to the public on regards of a potential evacuation. At the same time, they were modeling or trying to come up with a timeline for us in how long it would take police to evacuate the zones, which we use to help trigger our notification. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Tammy.
Hi, Hi, for Chief Ventura, do you guys know yet the origin of the location and why the fire started? And did you use the drones in the previous fire that was kind of close to the area for the hot spots and things like that?
At this time, the question is, do you know what the origin of the fire is, and also are the drones used in finding that information? Chief?
So this fire is still under investigation. Some of the people that need to be interviewed have been working all week. So the investigator will be interviewing them soon, I hope. The drone was used on the previous week's fire, and the fire was contained and had a dozer line all the way around it, and the drone was used to identify hotspots that were in the center, and the crews were working from the perimeter in on that fire from Saturday. And then Wednesday we had the second fire start, or the other fire start.
Thank you, Chief. Colleen?
How big is the eucalyptus grove that's been creating issues, and since you can't send people in there, what's being done to make sure it doesn't increase the spread or intensity of the fire?
The question is how big is the eucalyptus grove that is within the fire, and how do you address that part of the fire within the eucalyptus grove?
Yeah, great question. So I don't have an acreage on that portion of the fire. You can see the stand of trees, which is a vertical stand up at the very top of the fire. And the way we're addressing it right now is we're utilizing the heavy water drops from the military aircraft, because they can drop 500 to 1,000 or more gallons of water at a time. So we're really trying to saturate that area. And then once it's cooled off, then we'll probably be going in with maybe Sawyers if there's still hot spots in there.
Thank you, Chief. Chelsea?
Are you aware of any self-evacuations?
The question is, are you aware of any self-evacuations?
I am not aware of any evacuations, self-evacuations. I'm kind of thinking about there are multiple things happening on the cutoff on the first night. So I think there were, I'm not certain, so I'm not certain about the self-evacuations. I know that we were coordinating on the first night with the national parks. There could have been some evacuations. I'm just kind of trying to pull in that, recollect. As far as I'm certain, I guess I'm sure that because of all the information that was coming out and the angst, I would imagine that people did, in fact, self-evacuate, but I do not have those numbers.
So we know that the national park employees who live up in the park or stay up in the park were told to leave. And I think they took some of the mules that were up there as well to Oski Rice Arena to be housed, and that I believe the head ranger, Ari, had mentioned as a precaution, they brought their people out of the park just in case the fire worked its way out. I believe that's true.
Yes, Colleen.
How many people were you preparing to potentially evacuate if the fire had reached the upper Kula communities, and how would that process have looked different based on what you did last year?
The question is, if we were under the need to evacuate, about how many people in that current Zone 1 would have had to been evacuated, and how does that look different than the fire last year?
That is a wonderful question. So we had created, I believe, 9 zones. The total amount of structures in the 9 zones, and structures meaning roofs, so really unidentifiable as far as it being a carport, a shed, or a house. We use GIS data to gather that number. It was 5,500 in the total zones that we expected could be impacted. That is above and below Lower Kula Highway. In Zone 1, there were 556 structures, I believe. We have that number. In regards to, I'm sorry, I missed the question about, well, in regards to how it would have happened on online, I'm not sure how that would have taken place. I wasn't there.
How it would have happened, how the evacuation would have happened this year, and if that would be a different process based on lessons from upcountry fires.
So the evacuation piece is dependent on the expected impact, right? The incident type, the incident location, and the impact. What is tricky about it is that the wind swirl, and so depends on the wind speeds that will change, and the wind direction. It'll change the evacuation kind of cadence, if you will. One of the critical pieces that we were monitoring all night was fire into the gulch. The fires got a hold of the gulch. Those fires would travel directly down into the residential areas, and so we're paying attention to that. So that would have kind of changed the cadence as well. And so what was critical for us is to be in constant contact with the unified command to in fact confirm the direction and the potential impacts that would help us to establish the evacuation in a timely and efficient way. Thank you.
Thank you. Could take one or two more questions. Cami?
In regards to the perimeter being made by the breaks, and maybe to explain a little bit what contained means for us, because we think if it's contained, it's in one little area. So if you kind of could explain that a little bit, and if there is any possibility that the fire now could, embers could go up and go with the wind and maybe start a fire downwind.
The question is, could you explain how the perimeter is made and what that means, and also what the term contained means when we're talking about the fire?
Yeah, we kind of talked about this because we have different numbers and it confuses people. So, for example, we have dozer lines around 70% of the fire, but the fire is 80% contained. So people wonder how. So we can contain fire with water, dozer lines, roads, rivers, streams, lakes. Those all create containment of a fire because we're comfortable and confident that the fire cannot just walk its way out into a larger place. To your point about hotspots and sparks and ember ignition, that's always a possibility. When our trade winds are blowing, and as were mentioned earlier, we had winds up of 40 miles an hour up there on the hill over the last week. If we have a big enough fire, especially in that eucalyptus grove, and it starts to get up into the tops of the trees and starts crowning, it can throw fire half a mile, 3/4 of a mile away, in which case we can have a fire outside the perimeter pretty quickly. So that's why we need to just make sure everybody's still vigilant and paying attention. Our goal is to continue working on the perimeter area and work our way in towards the middle of the fire as best as we can. It will take, like I said, it's a 4-mile perimeter to walk around, and only a quarter of a mile of it's on the road. So everything is being done via helicopter and hiking the troops in and dropping them off in various areas.
Mahalo, I can take one more question. Chivo?
One about the drones, and I'm sure the helicopters have GPS, but do the drones have GPS capabilities, and is that how you can accurately know where to drop people quickly?
The question is, do the drones have GPS capabilities, and does that help as far as identifying where to position the firefighters and possibly the drops to put out the fire?
Yeah, so when we fly our FLIR flights at night and identify the hot spots, that information gets portrayed to operations, and then they can focus on the areas. It does have software interfaced with it, so we can overlay it over a map. So you can see the gulch areas, you can see landmarks like the eucalyptus grove, and then you can see the perimeter clearly. And then we can work using the mapping to identify the exact locations of where hotspots are, where we should be putting people in our efforts.
And I just wanted to say thank you very much for all of the effort of everyone concerned in putting this out.
Absolutely. It's a team effort. Thanks.
Mahalo nui. This formally concludes our press conference. Thank you.